Today we'll be going over a DMV pre-trip inspection on our rig. This is by no means the way it has to be done, just a general outline for the things that must be checked. The rig we'll be using is the Pierce Aero XT pumper, and the specs of this rig are as follows. 30 foot, 5-inch overall length, 10 foot, 8-inch overall height, including the deck gun. 10 foot total width, mirror to mirror, 181.5-inch wheelbase. Approximate weight of 45,500 pounds, with 21,500 being on the front axle and 24,000 on the rear axle. Brake check and COLA. So to start our check, we're going to get in the driver's seat, start it up, and let our air tanks top off before we pull it out of the station. This is also when I like to check all my gauges, do their full cycle to be sure they are all working, as well as quickly check my defrosters, wipers, steering play, and mirror positioning. As I pull the rig on the ramp and bring it to a stop, that checks off the service brake is working. I will then release the service brake and apply my air brake, making sure it holds the rig, which confirms that it is in working order as well. Now I will shut the rig off, flip my visor down, set my chalk, and I'm ready to start my full COLA check. Key note, flipping the visor down is optional, but it serves as a reminder to the driver that they have their chocks down. We will be performing the following brake checks on our brake system. Static test. Release air brake and you will see an initial drop in your air tanks. Once it is settled, start a 60-second timer and you should see no more than 2 psi drop in that time. Applied test. Fully depress the service brake, you will again see an initial drop in air tank pressure. Once settled, start another 60-second timer and you should see no more than 3 psi drop. Low air alarm test. Continually pump your brakes until you get a low air alarm. There should be an audible beeping as well as visual notifications on the command zone screen, and a red light next to your tank gauges. These should come on between 55 and 75 psi. Spring brake activation. Continue pumping your brakes until your air brake pull handle pops out on its own. This tells you that your spring brake is automatically activated. This should occur between 20 and 45 psi. For our last 3 brake checks, we'll start the rig back up, let the tanks fill, and then continue. Charge rate test. As our air tanks rise, we will watch for them to get to 85 psi and start a timer. The tank should fill from 85 to 100 psi in no more than 45 seconds. Cutout test. Now as we watch our tanks continue to fill, we are watching for when it cuts out and stops filling. You can tell this from the visual of the gauge stopping and the audible of the air dryer blowing off pressure. Cutout should be no higher than 140 psi per DMV, but it is usually around 120 for our new rigs. Cut in test. Our final test is testing when the compressor will kick on and start filling our tanks. We test this by pumping the brakes a few times and confirming that the gauges quickly start to rise again. It should kick on automatically no lower than 85 psi. This concludes our brake check, so now I will move on to our lighting check and walk around. With the rig still running, I will ask a crew member to go to the front of the rig and check a few things for me. These will be my turn signals, opticom, and high beam flash. Note that to check the opticom and high beam flash, code 3 lights must be on and the rig must be in drive with the air brake off. Next, I will put the rig back in neutral, set the air brake, and ask my crew member to go to the back of the rig and check my rear turn signals, brake lights, and reverse lights. The rest of our lights can be checked from the outside during our walk around, so at this point I flip on all my lights. Code 3s, all scene lighting, high beams, hazards, etc. and head towards the back of my rig, flipping on my panel lighting along the way. Where you start your walk around is personal preference. I also start my morning with an inventory check of the rig, so I will not be checking the inventory of the compartments. Rather, I will just be checking the condition of the strip lighting and the operation of the compartment doors. So I start off my walk around about 15 feet away from the driver's side to get an overall view of the condition of the rig. I'm looking to make sure all my lights are operating properly for any obvious body damage, any kind of lean in the suspension, wires, components hanging abnormally, pooling of fluids, condition of the glass in my windows, etc. Next, I move up close, starting at the back of the driver's side, and I'm getting my hands on everything, checking the operation and condition up close. Hands-on checks, engineer's side. For the body panels, trim, compartment doors, and all externally mounted hardware, I'm looking for the following. Any new dings, dents, damage, etc. Compartment doors open, close, and close securely with no issue, and hinges are in good condition. LED strip lighting in compartments is free of damage, debris, moisture, and all LEDs are functioning. All mounting hardware is present, and all doors, trim, and panels are securely mounted with no abnormal play. All flip-down steps are mounted securely with all hardware. Be sure to specifically check for your Class ABC extinguisher as well as your roadside triangles. These are required by the DMV to be carried at all times. For all my lights and reflectors, I get my hands on them and check up close for the following. Lights are free of damage, debris, and moisture. All lights fully functional and securely mounted with all mounting hardware. Reflectors free of cracks, dust, and are clearly visible and mounted securely. On this first walk around, I just give my tires a quick overview check, making sure they're adequately inflated and for general condition of the wheels and rubber, so that I know I'm good to go if we pop a call during my check. However, I will be coming back to them later for a more in-depth check. As I get to my pump panel, I also give this a quick overview as I will come back to it to do an in-depth check, but I'm just quickly looking for the following. Quick check up top to be sure the tank is full of water. Pop your intake cap to make sure intake is free of rocks or debris. Check all caps to make sure they are tight enough so that they won't fall off while driving, but not so tight that they can't be taken off by hand. This goes for all caps around the rig. Give crosslays a quick look to be sure nozzles and folds are secure and will not fall out while driving. As I get to the cab, I want to get a good look at my windows from the outside. Then I open up each door to get a quick check of it. I will come back for my full interior check later. For my doors and glass, I'm looking for the following. Windows go all the way up and all the way down and are clean and free of any cracks, damage, or stickers that will impede vision. I'm going to check for condition of interior and exterior weather stripping for the doors and windows, and door hinges are in good condition, have all mounting hardware, and catch strap is mounted properly with no tears or damage. Step lighting on doors work with no damage, debris, or moisture. Locking mechanism engages and disengages as it should. I already checked the positioning of my mirrors, so now I'm just checking for the following. Mirrors are clean and free of cracks or damage. Mirrors are securely mounted to the cab with all mounting hardware, and mirror panels are mounted in housing tight enough to minimize vibration. Front of rig check. As I get to the front of my rig, I will start the same thing as the driver's side. I step back about 15 feet and get a general impression of my body panel condition, windows, lights, suspension lean, cooling fluids, etc. I then like to get up close on the bumper and start my hands-on check from high to low. From here, I'm looking for the following. Top light bar is securely mounted with no play, and it's free of damage, debris, and moisture. All clearance lights are working and free of damage, debris, and moisture. Windshield is clean with no cracks, stickers, or clutter on the dash that will impede vision. Weather sealer on glass is in good condition with no dry rot or missing parts. Wipers have blades in good condition, proper spring tension against glass, and water lines are in good condition with no dry rot or holes. Check all front end lights and reflectors for proper operation, mounting hardware, and damage, debris, and moisture. Grab handles are mounted securely with all hardware in place, and check grille and intercooler beyond for condition of fins as well as any debris restricting airflow. Bell is mounted to cab securely with all hardware. Check hose compartment doors for operation and condition of hinges, struts, and latches. Captain's side. The captain's side check of the rig is going to be almost identical as the engineer's side with a few exceptions. Air intake. As we get to the air intake opening on the captain's side of the cab, I want to make sure the metal mesh door is in good condition with no obstructions to airflow, as well as that it opens, closes, and closes securely. I also want to open it up to see the spark arrestor. This should be clean with no rips or tears, as well as free of debris that could restrict airflow. The area of the pump panel on the captain's side is the first chance we have to get real eyes on our pump and water tank. So I like to grab a flashlight and open these doors up to get a general overview of them. There's a lot going on in the pump area, so I'm generally just looking for the following. Any clean or shiny metal on any parts of the pump that indicates something is rubbing or wearing on the paint or other parts. Look for any frayed or torn wires in any parts of the wiring harness. Look at condition of the tank to be sure the plastic is free of any degradation, cracks, or other damage. Any significant water leaks from any connections or fittings. The exhaust is something I will check more thoroughly when I roll around under the rig, but as I come to it on my walk around, I give it a quick wiggle with my boot to ensure it is secured in place, doesn't have too much play, and isn't sagging abnormally. Note that if the rig has been running, this can be very hot, so that's why I use my boot. Rear. As we come to the rear of the vehicle, I again start the same way. Stand back, look for any obvious body damage, suspension leans, fluid leaks, dangling components, etc. Similar to the previous sides, as I come up close, I'm opening every compartment door to ensure it can open, close, and close securely. I'm also checking for every light for proper function as well as damage, debris, moisture, and that they are securely mounted. A couple key points to check on the rear of the rig are as follows. Check all externally mounted caps and tools, such as LDH spanners, to be sure they are mounted securely and will not fall off while driving. Check all clips of hose bed cover for condition and operation to be sure cover is secured. Check for operation of work light and rear scene light switches. Check for operation of hose bed cover switches. Check for operation of license plate light, as well as mounting hardware for license plate. This is a DMV requirement. Top of rig. Now that I have done the full walk around of my rig and I have finished at the back, this is the point that I like to climb up top and check everything above. Starting with the hose bed cover doors closed, I climb up and walk to the front of the hose bed and back. This first back and forth, I'm looking for the following. Check top of hose bed cover for any damage, missing bolts or hardware. Check both sections of hard suction for secureness and mounts, condition of couplings and strainer, and overall condition of rubber for dry rot or cracks. Now we open up the hose bed covers and check inside the hose bed, and we're looking for the following. Condition of all welds, hinges, and hardware on underside of cover door. Ensure lights for working in hose bed are operational. Check all struts condition and be sure hose bed doors stay up securely. Check wiring looms for any fraying or broken wires. Continuing past the hose bed on top of the engine, we are going forward and checking for operation and condition of cross-lay bed doors, operation of deck gun, moving it up, down, all the way side to side, position lock, and that it can be removed if needed. Condition of all antennas on top of the cab, condition of the AC unit on top of the cab, taking note of looking inside near condenser to be sure that nothing is obstructing airflow. Take another look at the light bar for overall condition and secureness. Tires. Now that we have finished the check on the whole exterior and top of the rig, I will move on to doing a thorough check of my wheels and tires. I typically start at the rear driver's side again and work my way around. The front, steering, and rear drive tires have a few key differences that must be considered. Starting with the rear duals, we're looking for the following. Tread depth for the rear non-steering tires must be 2/32 or 1/16 of an inch at a minimum. Check in multiple locations on tire to be sure they are wearing evenly, and note that rear tires can be retreads. Check tire pressure according to the pressure stated on the Crossfire label, as well as the yellow placard by the engineer's seat. Check the Crossfire lines for their condition. These steel braided lines often wear through on the wheels. Check the overall condition of the aluminum wheels, looking for any dings, dents, cracks, etc. Also make sure the heat indicator sticker has not turned dark, which would indicate that the wheel has been exposed to excessive heat. Pop off all the lug nut caps and check for any metal shavings, damaged threads, or anything else that could indicate movement of the lug nuts. Check the paper gasket behind the HUD cover for any tears or fluid leaks. Look at the general condition of your tires. They should be clean of holes, bulges, gouges, nails, cracks, etc., and have even tread wear. Check between your duals to be sure the tires are not bulging and rubbing on each other, and that there are no sticks, rocks, or debris wedged between the tires. The front tires are going to have many of the same checks as the rears, with a couple key differences. Front steer tires must have a minimum of 4/32 or 1/8 inch tread depth and cannot be retreads. Check hub fluid by popping off the rubber plug and looking inside. Pump check. The final part of our check on the exterior of our rig is going to be our pump check. This rig has a Waterous CSU single stage midship mounted centrifugal pump, and it is rated at 1500 GPM and has a 650 gallon tank. It is equipped with the Pump Boss PBA 400 pressure governor and the Trident air operated priming system. To start the pump check, I'll jump in the rig, put it in pump, flip down my visor to indicate chocks are down, and set my chocks. As I step out, the first thing I do is give a quick glance on my captain's side, then back to the engineer's side to be sure my water level LED lights and pump panel lights have come on now that the rig is in pump. Now, as I get to the panel, I double check that all my valves are closed to be sure nothing will accidentally charge. Then I open my tank to pump valve and crack my tank valve and recirc valve. Before I prime my pump, I like to switch the pump into RPM mode. This confirms that the pump can switch into RPM mode and also allows me to check the RPM preset, which should be set at 1000. Once the engine is at 1000 RPM, I prime my pump, confirming both that my pump discharge pressure has picked up and that water has been discharged from under the pump. Now I will check the pump is capable of switching from RPM to pressure mode. Given that the pump is not at idle, this is done by holding the pressure button for 5 seconds. Once I have confirmed that the pump can switch modes at an RPM above idle, I throttle back down to idle so I can check the pressure preset. This is done just by pressing the preset button and should be set to 110 PSI. The last part of my pump check is confirming the governor is doing its job. The governor works by detecting pressure in the discharge manifold and adjusting engine RPMs to maintain the pressure that it was set at. To check the operation while it is at 110 psi, I fully open my tank fill valve. This gives the water more room to exit the manifold, therefore reducing the pressure inside it. So the engine should automatically increase the RPMs to maintain the pressure. I then shut the tank fill back down, which increases the pressure in the discharge manifold, so the engine should throttle down to maintain 110 psi. Interior checks. We'll now move on to the interior of the rig to check that. And as I'm going, I also like to secure my cab for tilting at the same time. Starting from outside at our driver's seat, I check everything by the pedals to make sure nothing is out of place and everything is sturdy. This includes throttle and brake pedals are secured with no abnormal play. Siren foot button is secured in place. Steering column has no abnormal play. All switches and buttons are free of damage and mounted properly. All wires are free of fraying and damage. Portable flashlight works properly and is secured in holster and charging. I then climb up into the seat to check the rest of the driver's area. This includes all seat adjustment controls work properly and seat is adjusted to my height. Gauge cluster is clean and free of anything impeding view of the gauges. Lights above seat are working. Headset is plugged in and all parts are in good condition. All heating and AC controls work properly. Seatbelt locks and unlocks, has no tears, fraying, or damage, and tensioner will lock if excessive force is detected. Dash is free of clutter obstructing view through the windshield. I'll now get out and move back to the back seats and check everything inside there, including portable flashlights on both sides work properly and are secured in holsters and charging. All seat belts are free of tears, fraying, and other damage, will lock and unlock, and will lock tensioner when excessive force is applied. All lights above seats work with no issue. All compartment doors in front of and above rider seat open, close, and close securely with no issue. All apparatus binders are present if needed. Headsets are plugged in and all parts are in good condition. Stepping out on the captain's side, I'll move up to the captain's area to finish the interior checks, including lights above seat work with no issue. Reset iPad, make sure it is secured in its mount, is on, and is charging. Knox keys are present and secured, and unlock mechanism is working properly. Dash is free of clutter obstructing view through the windshield. Captain side light controls work properly. Portable flashlight works properly, is secured in mount, and is charging. Headset is plugged in and all parts are in good condition. Captain's clipboard is present and is stocked with all forms and pens. This concludes the interior check, and as we have been securing the cab as we go, we are now ready to tilt the cab. Before tilting the cab, I like to do a quick walk around to be sure that there is nothing that the cab will hit as it is being tilted. It is also a good idea if you have an extra set of hands to have someone looking in through the windshield as you are tilting to be sure nothing is loose and moving around. Undercab motor check. Now that our cab is tilted, we ensure our safety bar is flipped up before working under the cab, and we'll move on to the motor checks. The drivetrain of this rig is powered by Detroit Motors DD13 turbo diesel motor. It is a 12.8 liter inline six that produces 525 horsepower and 1850 foot-pounds of torque. The motor is connected to an Allison 5th Gen 4500P EVS transmission. This transmission has 6 forward gears, 1 reverse gear, and pumps in 4th. The motor uses 40 quarts of 10W30 CK4 motor oil and has 55 quarts of coolant running through its system. And the transmission uses 39 quarts of Transcend synthetic ATF. Again, where you start these checks is personal preference, and I like starting my motor check at the back of the motor near the pump on the captain's side. First thing I do is use my flashlight to look into the pump and get a more in-depth idea of the general condition. Again, I'm looking for the following: condition of the tank, making sure there are no cracks, leaks, or other damage. Overview of pump to make sure there is no shiny metal indicating abnormal movement of parts. No damaged or frayed wires in any of the wiring looms. Now, I continue working my way forward around the engine, looking over all of the components. I also like to wipe things down with a rag as I go, as it is hard to see damage or cracks if they are coated in dirt. There's a lot going on in here, so I really just look for any obvious abnormalities or damage. This includes the following: batteries are securely mounted in trays with no bulging or corrosion on cables, terminals, or any sides of the battery. Check all bolts on frame to be sure they are not backed out or loose. If they have tamper paint or tack welds, inspect them to see they are intact. Inspect all wiring looms and harnesses for fraying or damaged wires. Check exhaust piping and make sure it is securely mounted heat shielding is intact and that there is no abnormal thermal damage around it. Check drive shaft for any play in the U-joints. Inspect exhaust side of turbo for intact heat shielding and thermal damage anywhere around it. Look for any fluid leaks coming from any part of the engine. Inspect suspension components, be sure they are securely mounted and free of any cracks or damage, including shocks, leaf springs, shackles, and U-bolts connecting them to the axle. Note, the front leaf packs are a 3-pack, 4 inches wide by 54 long with a rating of 21,500 pounds. As we come to the brakes, we want to specifically check a few things closer on the brake system. This rig uses the Meritor Wabco 4S4M 4-wheel air disc brake system with anti-lock ABS. It has Meritor EX225 17-inch ventilated rotors and automatic pad wear adjustment. And we want to visually inspect the components for the following. Rotors should be free of any grooves, warping, or glazing that could indicate overheated brake pads. Check the brake pad indicator pin to measure the pad material. Per DMV, this must be a 1/4 inch at a minimum. Moving forward with our motor check, we will continue to check the following. Motor oil. Level should be within marks on dipstick. Note the dark black oil is normal in diesel motors. Coolant level and color can be seen through the sight gauge atop the radiator. Transmission fluid should be between the marks on the dipstick and should be a clear red color. It should not smell burnt or fouled. Check the belts for condition and tension. The motor has an automatic tensioner, but belts should still have no more than 3/4 inch movement either way, or 1.5 inches total. Belts should be free of tears and cracks. Fan fin should be free of cracks or damage, and radiator fin should be free of dents or damage and anything that could impede airflow. Check all coolant and air hoses for damage, dry rot, and general condition of the rubber. Check power steering fluid. This has a sight gauge, but I like to double check on the dipstick as well. Undercarriage check. Now that we have checked everything in the engine compartment, we will grab a creeper and check the undercarriage of the engine. I like to start from front to back here. I'm looking for the following as I do this check. No leaks or damage at the bottom of the radiator. All hose lines and wire looms are free of damage and securely mounted. Check all suspension components again for secureness and any damage. Check steering linkage and end links for no abnormal play. Check drive shaft for any play in the U-joints. This takes a lot of force to feel. Inspect frame for any cracks, worn paint, or general damage. Exhaust system should be securely mounted with no low-hanging parts and free of damage. Inspect pump transmission and pump packing for any abnormal or excessive leaks. Also check the sight gauge for pump transmission fluid level. Air tanks. Bleed all 4 air tanks using a rag to avoid debris getting in eyes. There should not be excessive moisture or debris in these tanks. Check rear drive shaft as well for any play in the U-joints. Check rear axle and suspension for any damage, loose parts, or abnormal movement. Note, the rear spring packs are 10 springs, 3 inches by 52 inches with a rating of 24,000 pounds. Check fuel tank for secure mounting with the large metal straps, and there should be no fuel leaks whatsoever. Check rear brake pad indicators and brake rotors for abnormal grooves, glazing, or warping. Thank you for watching. This concludes our review of the pre-trip inspection and weekly check.